we finished and
Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome to the end of holds. I guess this would be the filling? Huh? Yeah, I didn't like that joke either. Anyways, we're finishing the book today. We're reading 22 pages, which is the first time in a good minute that we've finished a book without overreading or underreading. So, yeah. Let's begin. Chapter 47. The sun was up and Stanley's heart was still beating. There was 8 lizards in the hole with him. Each one had exactly 11 yellow spots. The warden had dark circles under her eyes and a lack of sleep and lines across her forehead, and a face which seemed exaggerated in a stark morning light. Her skin looked blotchy. "Satan," said Zero. Stanley looked at him, unsure if Zero had even spoken or if he had just imagined it. "Why don't you go and see if you take the suitcase from Zero?" the warden suggested. "Yeah, right," said Mr. Sir. "The lizards obviously aren't hungry," said the warden. "Then you go get the suitcase," said Mr. Sir. They waited. "Satan Lee," said Zero. Something time later, Stanley saw a tarantula crawl across the dirt, not too far from this hole. He had never seen a tarantula before, but there was no doubt about what it was. He was moving frantically, fascinated by it, as its big hairy body moved slowly and steadily along. "Look, a tarantula," said Mr. Sir, also fascinated. "I'd never seen one," said the warden, except in... Stanley suddenly felt a sharp sting in the side of his neck. The lizard hadn't bitten him, however. It was merely pushing it off. It left off Stanley's neck and pounced on the tarantula. The last Stanley saw of it was one hairy leg sticking out of the lizard's mouth. "Not hungry, huh?" said Mr. Sir. Stanley tried to return to the snow, but it was harder to get there when the sun was up. As the sun rose, the lizards moved lower into the hole, keeping mainly in the shade. They were no longer on his head and shoulders, but moved down to his stomach, legs, and feet. He couldn't see any lizards but on Zero, but believed there were 2, between Zero's knees, shaded from the sun by the suitcase. "How are you doing?" Stanley asked quietly. He didn't whisper, but his voice was dry and raspy. "My legs are numb," said Zero. "I'm going to try to climb out of this hole," Stanley said. As he tried to pull himself up using just his arms, he felt a crawl dig into his ankle. He gently eased himself back down. "Is your last name your first name backwards?" Zero asked. Stanley stared at him in amazement. Had he been working on that all night? He heard the sound of approaching cars. Mr. Sir and the warden heard it as well. "You think it's them?" asked the warden. "It ain't Girl Scouts selling cookies," said Mr. Sir. He heard the cars come up to a stop and the doors open shut. A little while later he saw Mr. Budensky and 2 strangers coming across the lake. One was a tall man in a business suit and a cowboy hat. The other was a short woman holding a briefcase. The woman had tried to take 3 steps for every 2 of them taken by the man. "Stanley Elnat," she called, moving out ahead of the others. "I suggest you don't come any closer," said Mr. Sir. "You can't stop me," she snapped, and took a second glance at him, wearing pajama pants and nothing else. "We'll get you out of there, Stanley," she said. "Don't worry. You worry." She appeared to be Hispanic, with straight black hair and dark eyes, as she spoke with a little bit of Mexican accent, trailing her R's. What in tarnation?" the tall man exclaimed as he came up behind her. She turned on him. "I'm telling you right now, if any harm comes to him, we'll be filing charges not only against Miss Walker and Camp Green Lake, but the entire state of Texas as well. Child abuse, false imprisonment, torture." The man was more than a head taller than she was, and was able to look directly over her as he spoke to the warden. "How long have they been in there?" "All night, as you can see by the way they're dressed. They snuck into my cabin while I was asleep and stole my suitcase. I chased after them and they ran out here and I fell into the lizard's nest. I don't know what they're thinking." "That's not true," Stanley said. "Stanley, as your attorney, I advise you not to say anything," said the woman, "until you and I have had a chance to talk in private." Stanley wondered why the warden lied about the suitcase and wondered who it legally belonged to. It was no one. He wanted to ask the lawyer if she really was his lawyer. "It's a miracle they're still alive," said the tall man. "Yes, it is," the warden agreed, with just a trace of disappointment in her voice. "And they'd better come out of this alive," said the lawyer warned. "This wouldn't have happened if you released them to me yesterday." "It wouldn't have happened if he wasn't a thief," said the warden. "I told him he could be set free today, and I guess he decided to try to take some of my valuables with him. He'd been delirious for the last week." "Why didn't you release them when she came to you yesterday?" the tall man asked. "She didn't have a proper authorization," said the warden. I had a court order. I was not authenticized," said the warden said. "Authenticized? authenticated. It was signed by the judge who sentenced him. I need an authentication from Attorney General, said the warden. How do I know it's legitimate? The boys in my custody have proven themselves dangerous to society. Am I supposed to turn them loose anytime someone hands me a piece of paper? Yes, said the woman. It's a court order. Stanley has been hospitalized for the last few days, the warden explained. He's been suffering from hallucinations and delirium, ranting and raving. He was in no condition to leave. The fact that he was trying to steal from me from the day before he released proves Stanley tried to climb out of the hole, using mostly his arms not to disturb the lizards too much. As he pulled himself upwards, the lizard moved downward, keeping in the sun's direct rays. He swung his legs up, over, and the last of the livers hopped off. Thank God, exclaimed the warden. She started toward him, then stopped. The lizard crawled out of his pocket and down his leg. Stanley was overcome by a rush of dizziness and almost fell over. He steadied himself when he reached down, took hold of Zero's arm, and helped him slowly to his feet. Zero still held the suitcase. The lizards, which had been hiding under it, scurried quickly into the hole. Stanley and Zero were staggered away. The warden rushed to them. He shrugged Zero. Thank God you're alive, she said, as she tried to take the suitcase from him. He jerked it free. It belongs to Stanley, he said. I don't cause any more trouble, the warden warned. You stole it from my cabin and you've been caught red-handed. If I press charges, Stanley might have to return to prison. Now I'm willing, in view all circumstances, to. It's got his name on it, said Zero. Stanley's lawyer pushed past the tall man and have a look. See? Zero's shoulder. Stanley Yelnats. Stanley looked too. There was a big black letters. Was Stanley Yelnats. The tall man looked over his heads of the other and the name of the suitcase. You say he stole it from your cabin. The warden stared in disbelief. That's It's impossible. She couldn't even say it. Chapter 48. They slowly walked back to camp. The tall man was the Texas Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer for the state. Stanley's lawyer was named Miss Morango. Stanley held the suitcase. He was so tired he couldn't think straight. He felt as if he was walking in a dream, not quite able to comprehend what was going on around him. They stopped in front of the camp office. Mr. Sir went inside to get Stanley's belongings. The Attorney General had told Mr. Budensky to get the boys something to drink and eat. The warden seemed as dazed as Stanley. You can't even read, he said to Zero. Zero said nothing. Miss Morango put a hand on Stanley's shoulder and told him to hang in there. He would be seeing his parents soon. She was shorter than Stanley, but somehow gave the appearance of being tall. Mr. Budensky returned with 2 cartons of orange juice and 2 bagels. Stanley drank the juice and didn't feel eating anything. Wait, the warden exclaimed. I didn't say they stole the suitcase. It's his suitcase, obviously, but he put my things from the cabin inside it. That isn't what you said earlier, said Miss Morango. What's in the suitcase? The warden asked Stanley. Tell us what's in it, and we'll open it and see. Stanley didn't know what to do. Stanley, as your lawyer, I advise you not to open your suitcase, said Mr. Morango. He has to open it, said the warden. I have the right to check the personal property of any of the detainees. How do I know there aren't drugs or weapons in there? He stole a car, too. I've got witnesses. She was nearly hysterical. He's no longer under your jurisdiction, said Stanley's lawyer. He's not been officially released, said the warden. Open the suitcase, Stanley. Do not open it, said Stanley's lawyer. Stanley did nothing. Mrs. Sir returned from the office of Stanley's backpack and clothes. The Attorney General handed Miss Morango a sheet of paper. You're free to go, he said to Stanley. I know you're anxious to get out of here, so if you want to keep the orange suit as a souvenir or burn it, whatever you want. Good luck, Stanley. He reached out a hand to shake, but Miss Morango hurried Stanley away. Come on, Stanley, she said. We have a lot to talk about. Stanley stopped and turned to look at Zero. You couldn't leave him there. Zero gave him a thumbs up. I can't leave Hector, Stanley said. I suggest we go, said his lawyer with a sense of urgency in her voice. I'll be okay, said Zero. His eyes shifted toward Mr. Budensky to one side of him. Then to the warden and Mr. Sir on the other. There's no reason I can do for your friend, said Miss Morango. You were released pursuant to an order from the judge. They'll kill him, said Stanley. Your friend is not in danger, said the Attorney General. They're just going to investigation into everything that's happened here. For the present, I'm going to take in charge of the camp. Come on, Stanley, said his lawyer. Your parents are waiting. Stanley stayed where he was. His lawyer sighed. May I have a look at Hector's file? He asked. Certainly, said the Attorney General. Mrs. Walker, go get Hector's file. She looked at him blankly. Well? The warden turned to Mr. Budensky. Bring me Hector Zeroni's file. He stared at her. Get it, she ordered. Mr. Budensky went into the office. He returned a few minutes later and announced the file had apparently misplaced. The Attorney General was outraged. What kind of a camp are you running here, Miss Walker? The warden had nothing. She stared at the suitcase. The Attorney General assured Stanley's lawyer that he would get the records. Excuse me while I call my office. He turned back to the warden. I assume the phone works? He walked into the camp office, slamming the door behind him. A little while later, he reappeared and told the warden he wanted to talk to her. She cursed, then went inside. Stanley gave Zero a thumbs up. Caveman, is that you? He turned to see Armpit and Squid coming out of the rec room. Squid shouted back to the rec room. Caveman, Zero are out here. Soon all the boys of Group D had gathered around him and Zero. Good to see you, man, Armpit said, shaking his hand. We thought you'd been buzzard food. Stanley is being released today, said Mr. Budensky. Way to go, said Magnet, hitting him on the shoulder. And you don't even get to take a step on a rattlesnake, said Squid. Even Zigzag shook Stanley's hand. Sorry about, It's cool, said Stanley. We had to lift the truck clear out of the hole, Zigzag told him. It took everybody in C, D, and E. We picked it right up. It was really cool, said Twitch. X-Ray was the only one who didn't come over. Stanley saw him hang back on behind the others a moment, then returned to the rec room. Guess what, said Magnet, glancing at Mr. Budensky. Mom says we don't have to dig any more holes. That's great, Stanley said. Will you do me a favor? Asked Squid. I guess, Stanley agreed, somewhat hesitantly. I want you to. He turned to Mr. Marengo. Hey, lady, you have a pen and paper I can borrow? She gave it to him, and Squid wrote down a phone number, which he gave to Stanley. Call my mom for me, okay? Tell her I said I'm sorry. Tell her Alan said he was sorry. Stanley promised he would. Now you will be careful out in the real world, said Armpit. Not everybody is as nice as us. Stanley smiled. The boys departed when the warden came out of her office. The Attorney General was right behind her. The office is having more difficulty locating Hector Zararone's records, the Attorney General said. So, you have no claim to authority over him, said Mr. Marengo. I didn't say that. He's in the computer. We just can't access his records. It's like they've fallen through a hole in cyberspace. A hole in cyberspace, Mr. Marengo repeated. How interesting. When is his release date? I don't know. How long has he been here? Like I said, we can't. So what are you planning to do with him? Keep him confined indefinitely without justification while you go crawling back through black holes in cyberspace? The Attorney General stared at her. He was obviously incarcerated for a reason. Oh, and what reason was that? The Attorney General said nothing. Stanley's lawyer looked at Zero's hands. Come on, Hector, you're coming with us. Chapter 49. There was never used to be a yellow spotted lizard in the town of Green Lake. They didn't come from the area until the lake dried up, but the townsfolk had heard about the red-eyed monsters living in the desert hills. One afternoon, Sam, the Onion Man, and his donkey, Mary Lou, were returning onto his boat, with his anchored a little offshore. It was late in November. The peach trees had almost lost their leaves. Sam, someone called. He turned around to see three men running after him, waving their hats. He waited. Afternoon, Walter, Bo, Jesse. He greeted them as he walked up, catching their breath. Glad we caught you, said Bo. We're going rattlesnake nutting in the morning. We want to get some of your lizard juice, said Walter. I ain't scared of no rattlesnake, said Jesse, but I don't want to come across one of those red-eyed monsters. I seen one once, and that was enough. I knew about the red eyes, of course. I hadn't heard about the big black teeth. It was white tongues that got me, said Bo. Sam gave each man 2 bottles of pure onion juice. He told him to drink 1 bottle before going to bed that night, and then half a bottle in the morning, and then half a bottle around lunchtime. Are you sure this stuff works? Asked Walter. I'll tell you what, said Sam. If it doesn't, you can come back next week and I'll give you your money back. Walter looked around on shore, and Bo and Jesse laughed, and then Sam laughed too. Even Mary Lou let out a rare yee-haw. Just remember, Sam told the men before they left, it's very important you drink the bottle tonight. Got to get into your bloodstream. The lizards don't like onion blood. Stanley and Zero sat in the backseat of Miss Marengo's BMW. The suitcase lay between them. It was locked as they decided they'd let Stanley's father try to open it in his workshop. You don't know what's in it, do you? She asked. No, said Stanley. I don't think so. The air conditioning was on, but they drove with the windows open as well, because, no offense, but you boys really smell bad. Miss Moreno explained that she was his pet and attorney. I'm helping your father with the new product he's invented. He's happened to mention your situation, so I did a little investigating. Clyde Livingston sneakers were stolen sometime before 3:15. I found a young man, Derek Doon, who said that at 3:20 you were in the bathroom fishing your notebook out of a toilet. 2 girls remember seeing you come out of the boys' restroom carrying a wet notebook. Stanley felt his ears redden. Even after seeing it had been through, the memory still caused him to feel shame. So, you couldn't have stolen them, said Miss Marengo. He didn't, I did, said Zero. You did what? Asked Miss Marengo. I stole the sneakers. Laura actually turned around while driving and looked at him. I didn't hear that, she said, and I advise you make sure I don't hear it again. What did my father invent? Stanley asked. Did he find a way to recycle sneakers? No, he's still working on that, explained Miss Marengo, but he invented a product that eliminates foot odor. Here, I've got a sample in my briefcase. I wish I had more. You two could bathe in it. He opened her briefcase with one hand, passed a small bottle back to Stanley. It had a fresh and somewhat spicy smell. He handed it to Zero. What's it called? Zero asked. We haven't come up with a name yet, said Miss Marengo. It smells familiar, said Zero. Peaches, right? Asked Miss Marengo. That's what everyone says. A short while later, both boys fell asleep. Behind them was a sky that turned dark, and the first time in over 100 years, a drop of rain fell into the empty lake. Part 3. Filling in the holes. Chapter 50. Stanley's mother insisted that there never was a curse. She even doubts whether Stanley's great-great-grandfather really stole a pig. The reader might find it interesting, however, that Stanley's father invented his cure for foot odor the day after the great-great-grandson of Elia Yellownath carried a great-great-great-grandson of Madame Zeroni up a mountain. The Attorney General closed the Camp Green Lake. Miss Walker, who was desperate in need of money, had to sell the land, which had been in her family for generations. It was bought by a national organization dedicated to the well-being of young girls. In a few years, Camp Green Lake will become a Girl Scout camp. This is pretty much the end of the story. The reader probably still has some questions, but unfortunately, from here on in, the answers tend to be long and tedious. While Mrs. Bell, Stanley's former math teacher, might want to know percent change in Stanley's weight, the reader probably cares more about the change in Stanley's character and self-confidence. But those changes were subtle and hard to measure. There's no simple answer. Even the contents of the suitcase turned out to be somewhat tedious. Stanley's father pried it open in the workshop, and first everyone gasped at the sparkling jewels. Stanley thought he and Hector had become millionaires, but the jewels were poor quality, worth no more than $20,000. Underneath the jewels was a stack of papers that had once belonged to the first Stanley Yelnats. These consisted of stock certificates, deeds of trust, and promissory notes. They were hard to read and even more difficult to understand. Miss Morango's law firm spent more than 2 months going through all the papers. They turned out to be a lot more valuable than the jewels. After legal fees and taxes, Stanley and Zero had received less than $1 million, but not a lot less. It was enough for Stanley to buy his family a new house with a laboratory in the basement, and for Hector to hire a team of private investigators. But it would be boring to go through all the tedious details for all the changes in their lives. Instead, the reader will be presented with one last scene, which took place almost a year and a half after Stanley and Hector left Camp Green Lake. You'll have to fill in the holes yourself. There was a small party at the Yelnats' house, except for Stanley and Hector. Everyone there was an adult. All kinds of snacks and drinks were set up on the counter, excluding caviar, champagne, and the fixings to make ice cream sundaes. A Super Bowl was on television, but nobody was really watching. It should be coming on at the next break, said Miss Marengo announced. A timeout was called in a football game, and a commercial came on the screen. Everyone stopped talking and watched. The commercial showed a baseball game. Amid the cloud dust, Clyde Livingston slid into the home plate, and the catcher caught the ball and tried to tag him out. "Safe," shouted the umpire as he signaled his arms. The people at Stanley's house cheered, as if the run really counted. Clyde Livingston got up and dusted the dirt off his uniform. As he made his way back to the dugout, he spoke to the camera. "Hi, I'm Clyde Livingston, but everyone this calls me Sweet Feet." "Way to go, Sweet Feet," said another baseball player, slapping his hand. Besides being on television, Clyde Livingston was also sitting on a couch next to Stanley. "But my feet weren't always this sweet." The television, Clyde Livingston said as he sat down on the dugout bench. "They used to smell so bad that nobody would sit near me in the dugout." "They really did stink," said a woman sitting on the couch on the other side of Clyde. She held her nose with one hand and fanned the air with the other. Clyde shushed her. "Then the teammate told me about sploosh," said the television Clyde. He pulled a can of sploosh out from under the dugout bench and held it up for everyone to see. "I just spray a little on each foot every morning. Now I really do have sweet feet. Plus, I like the tingle." "Sploosh," said the voice. "A treat for your feet, made from all natural ingredients. It neutralizes odor causing fungi and bacteria. Plus, you'll like the tingle." Everyone at the party clapped their hands. "He wasn't lying," said the woman who sat next to Clyde. "How can he even be in the same room with his socks?" The other people at the party laughed. The woman continued. "I'm not joking. It was so bad. You've made your point," said Clive, covering her mouth with his hand. You looked back at Stanley. "Will you do me a favor, Stanley?" Stanley raised and lowered his left shoulder. "I'm going over to get more caviar," said Clyde. "Keep your hand over my wife's mouth." He patted Stanley on the shoulder as he rose from the couch. Stanley looked uncertainly at his hand, then Clive Livingston's wife. She winked at him. He felt himself blush and turned away toward Hector, who was sitting on the floor in front of an overstuffed chair. A woman sitting in the chair behind Hector was absent-mindedly fluffing his hair with her fingers. He wasn't very old, but her skin would look weathered to do it. Almost like leather. Her eyes seemed wary, as if she had seen too many things in her life and she didn't want to see, and then smiled. Her mouth seemed too big for her face. Very softly she half sang, half hummed a song about her grandmother used to sing to her when she was a little girl. If only, the moon speaks no reply, reflecting the sun and all that's gone by. Be strong, my weary wolf, turn around boldly. Fly high, my baby bird, my angel, my only. And that's the end of that. That is, without a second thought, without a doubt in my mind, the end of Holes. And we've made it. This was a great book. I'll be honest. This is one of my favorite books to read, even when I was a little kid. And I'm happy I got to share it with y'all. Really. I am. But this book is going back over there in my bookcase. So we're going to go right back. You guys can still hear me. I'm going to keep talking, but you know, we are done with the first, technically second, educational book on the channel. And we're going to go back to our roots and read a Five Nights at Freddy's book. We're back to our original roots. This time, however, we are reading the book titled Somnophobia. And there it is, right there. Look at that, it has Moon on it, but he looks a bit more dazed. Written by Carrie Parra and Adria Wagner, who's made a lot of the other books that are really good. But so far, this is one of the more darker books. Tales from the Pizzaplex are more of the darker series. So I'm excited to read this. The 3 books in this one are... Oh yeah, by the way, we're done talking about holes. Go away. But the 3 books in this one are titled... Hold on, I skipped the page on accident. I skipped the page again. Somnophobia. Ooh, we're starting off with the book. Pressure and Claustrophobia. I have never heard of claustrophobia. Let me look up what that means. What is Cleithrophobia?
According to Very Well Mind,
the fear of being trapped. Ooh, that sounds like it's gonna be good. And somnophobia is the fear of falling asleep, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Which I don't think I am. But yeah. So that's good. Or at least it should be good. Anyways, we're going to revert back and do 01 to 20. Whoop. And, yeah. Should be easy enough to read. It's, ooh, this is a new font. Very cool. We should be doing, I don't know, how many episodes? How many episodes are in this one book? There are 11. Well, we'll have this done by the middle of next month. That's good. Or the beginning of next month, technically. Anyways, hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. People like, be fishing, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.